Mental health and social media have been talked about for as long as social media has existed, I feel like. But something has been missing in that conversation all along. Neurodiversity. We want to talk about how do these three things interplay and how can we move forward as responsible marketers, as responsible business owners, and as responsible consumers, because we are people too within this beautiful mosaic of a life that we live. Now I have Allie here. She's going to talk to us a little bit about herself, where she's coming from, why this topic matters to her, and also why it should matter to you. Allie, welcome so much to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited about this conversation. So go ahead and share. Tell us a little bit about where you come from, what you do, why you do it, that sort of story. And then let's just explore this world.
Okay, yeah. So I have a private practice. I'm an SLP, and a BCBA, which you can see at the bottom. And I'm also an educational psychologist, but really I'm a person. I have ADHD, I have dyslexia. I've always been fascinated by relationship dynamics. And so that just comes into my work, right? So I do couples counseling. I work with people individually. And a lot of that is on relationship skills. So, whether it's furthering their romantic relationships, friendships, coworkers, but really just that human messy dynamic, which can at times feel frustrating when you put a neurodiverse lens on it because you're not sure what someone's trying to tell you or you're misinterpreting things. So that's kind of the bread and butter of what I do.
And you come from a place of like you say, you literally experience this day to day, and you're invested in every single step of the way. So when you're helping people with this, their day-to-day challenges and obstacles, it's not just from well, here's what the textbook says, so therefore you should go and do. Like, it's not theory only, right? We're talking about practical lived experience. We're talking about that connection between theory and reality.
Right. Absolutely.
And this is really cool because as our reality evolves and changes, the theory sometimes doesn't keep up.
Right. Fair. Yes.
Right. So this is where we start talking about showing up for yourself in your day-to-day, but also as entrepreneurs, showing up for your business and yourself day-to-day. And this looks very different, like all along. But I always say you're never not marketing. So you're going to be able to see threads that kind of expand across all of those spaces. So let's start with this conversation around social media and mental health, because that's really kind of the first door that opened when it came to these types of conversations.
Right.
And everybody knows, too much screen time, yada, yada, yada. Well, I'd like to hear your perspective on that connection between, of course, social media in general, but Instagram and mental health in general.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think, if you look at the research, it's not great. We shouldn't be on social media all the time, right? So I'm not going to sit here and say that. And you and I were even just saying privately about how we sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. So I think it's all about what boundaries you're putting in place around it and what the purpose is, right? So like for me, I love seeing my friends' babies. I love seeing other, like that to me is very connecting. I'm writing to them. There are a few neurodivergent accounts, which I am just like, God, the information on here is so amazing. You could tell it's well researched. And then I'll be honest, there's a bunch of crap out there that I read and I'm like, that's not true. That's just not an accurate, so I think with anything, right? Like when I was getting my doctorate, this was such a massive thing, but it's like, are you being a critical thinker, consumer of research is what I was kept getting told in my doctorate program. But it's the same thing about what you're getting on social media. Like if something doesn't sound right, it actually might not be right. It's not like people are up there citing their journals, but if you're seeing something over and over, like one thing that I think is so cool that's really popular right now on Instagram to talk about is neurodiversity and your menstrual cycle. So that's a thing that academia is only just starting to see as like, oh yeah, it's different. that really started because a bunch of women were like, wait, let's talk about this. And now the research is catching up. So there is a place to get information, and it's wonderful and beautiful. I also think like check in with yourself. I forget what the rule of thumb is. I want to say it's 5 to 10 minutes. After that point, you probably are just scrolling to scroll. Like you're getting that it's like, yes, everyone binging a TV show is cool, but let's be honest, you're happier when it drips out slowly and you can't watch it for 5 hours. I've done it. I'm not judging anyone. Trust me. I've had a whole day of Netflix. But I mean, there's research showing that you actually get better retention when you're dripping it out, right? So I think it's the same thing with Instagram or I'm not on TikTok, but I would assume I could easily get addicted to TikTok. But with Instagram, right? Really checking in like, am I even enjoying this? So my Instagram got hacked, I think it was like a month or so ago. And what was really reflective to me is how often I picked up my phone and went on the app. The app literally I couldn't get in. Like I was hacked. Like it was, but how often I just went to click that button was really a way for me to say, hey, I do this so mindlessly. So really, I think put intentionality into it too. And then, for us as business owners, we were just talking about this again. I'm really trying to say like, okay, if I'm going on Instagram, there's a social component and then there's also a business component. So feeling like I'm in the mood to have both of those hats on is important too, as opposed to just sort of mindlessly being on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you're not, and I guess the other side of this, the other side of the page is that if you're not doing these very intentional, very mindful practices around social media and Instagram is so good at keeping you there. Same with TikTok. You're right. You would get
addicted. Literally built. I mean, there are people, behavioral scientists in the background figuring out how to keep you on. They're geniuses, but there is that mechanisms in place.
Yeah. And so if you're not taking these steps, you can very easily succumb to mental illness that is correlated to excessive use of social media platforms.
Yes. And also the whole I would say for anyone starting a business, really, really cut down your social media, because my comparison and then analysis paralysis because of social media was outrageous. And then, I wanted to I was like, oh, this person's doing this. I could do this. Right. But the truth is, I only thought that because I saw what they were doing. It's not something I genuinely wanted to do.
And this is where that reflection and like actually looking at, I do regular audits, and this is what I promote for all of my clients. I'm saying, hey, look, every 3 months, we're going to audit your stuff. We're going to find out what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you'd like to be doing, and what's working and what's not working. What can we, asking all of the questions, and then taking the data and analytics to compare it with this to say, is this a smart choice based on the data? Is this a smart choice based on your heart? Because if you've been doing something that's been working, but it really is sucking your heart energy, then yeah, maybe we do need to make a change. But it's a very intentional change.
Yes.
And that's where your mental health comes into play. That's where like you need to really assess that. You can get sucked in, and then you're not actually getting those releases that you need. I mean, you talk about that dripped out situation, and we know that science tells us your dopamine, because people are always like, oh, it's my dopamine fix or something to that effect. Well, dopamine actually spikes before the anticipated event, not during it as much, right? Yeah. You've got that spike and then a mini one. So you're only getting that mini one, and I don't know if it genuinely has a half-life, but it feels like it has a half-life. Yeah. So you're literally getting less and less.
I look at social media kind of as like junk food, and not because it's bad, right? But like, let's be honest, if I go to a nice dinner, that's a way different dopamine hit as opposed to having some candy. Nothing against candy. I do it. But it's not going to fulfill me in the same way as a experience of a fancy dinner, going out with my partner, right? It's a totally different dopamine hit. And I think Instagram's just so accessible. So to your point, it's such a little bit of dopamine that honestly going on a walk outside would probably give you a higher level.
Yeah. The juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
more often than not. So I'm not a huge fan, and people may like scorn me for this, but I'm not a huge fan of like pastries. I don't love going to a bakery. My husband loves it. So we'll go and we'll stop because my life doesn't just revolve around me. So we'll stop at I need to see this bakery. All right, let's go. Oh, I want this tart. Okay, get the tart. Don't you want one? No, not really. It's not worth the calories to me because I
Yes,
won't
I get
enjoy
that.
it enough.
I get
But
that.
if we stop at an ice cream shop, you better bet your bottom dollar I'm going to get a big hunk of ice cream because I love it.
Yeah.
So it's really, what's it worth to you? Are you actually getting what you want to out of it? Now, the other side, I was going to say the other side though is the experience of a neurodiverse person.
Yeah, so I will say, for as much as I'm sitting here sort of knocking social media, during COVID, I think that social media was a blessing for neurodivergent people because the neurodiversity word has been around for a while. It's like the 1980s. However, I think the movement really took speed in COVID. And a lot of people did find friends that were neurodivergent. They found a lot of posts that actually resonated with them. I mean, so in that sense, it's, people, I have one of our mutual friends, Carol Jean, she's phenomenal.
She was on the podcast. If you haven't seen her episode, you totally should. I believe it was called something about neurospicy burnout. You want to watch it. Everyone, truly watch that episode because it had me.
She is quite a gem. And I met her on Instagram. And literally, I would consider her one of my best friends. So I will say, some of those old adages about like, well, our online friends, real friend, like I think that is shifting a lot. And now I will say her and I have taken our friendship off of Instagram. I have her number, we call, et cetera, et cetera. But that was the way we met each other. And it was the commonality of neurodivergence and being a woman and wanting to talk about it. So there definitely is a time and place for it. I've met some other people on Instagram that I just adore, and I only met them because of our commonality of neurodiverse women. So I definitely think it's a place for community, again, with the caveat to just remember, hey, if I'm relating to a lot of these posts, maybe I do have ADHD, maybe I am autistic. And there is nothing wrong with having an experience and starting to maybe self-diagnose and feel that way. However, I would really encourage someone to still either go see a professional or talk to your friends and family because they know you and they might be able to give you some insight, right? Like we all can do this. You can get in a tunnel vision of only seeing what you're reading. And sometimes it takes someone else to say like, yeah, you're distracted, but think about it. You get everything done all day, or you've never not actually followed up on something. So like you might have some distraction, but I don't know if you have ADHD, right? Just someone to help to be like, wait a second. Yes.
Perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. That's really important. And that's important in everything that you're consuming online. Yes. When you put things into perspective, then you're able to make more intentional choices for yourself and the way that you spend your time and energy.
Right.
And that's going to save you a lot of heartbreak when you're navigating the space because mental health is no joke, right? You need to have perspective when you're doing all these things. How am I taking care of myself while I'm marketing my business, while I'm consuming content for fun, which is your dopamine, right? Like that's kind of where we're coming from there. And then too, like as a marketer now, from the other side, we're going to flip the script and say, okay, well, I'm showing up on social media a lot because I have a business and I need to put myself out there. And I want to make sure that I'm connecting with the people who need my services, because a lot of the people who I'm speaking to are indeed service oriented. They're service minded. They want to help. And so we can get really caught up. In fact, I had another episode recently where we were talking about people pleasing and how when you can really, it's a slippery slope when you're marketing into falling into possibly old patterns or even new patterns of people pleasing. And that's where mental health needs to be respected as well.
Well, I think, one thing to consider, and I figured this out for myself, and it was a little bit of a journey. What type of person do you want to be on social media, right? So like an influencer, if you're of that level, like you are on there a lot. That is your job. That is what you're doing. That's the path you're choosing. And so when I first started my business, I don't think I realized truly how much time is dedicated to that level. And I quickly realized I'm never going to be able to dedicate that time, right? I'm never going to. I know I might be able to get more followers if I shared a little bit more about my personal life, maybe had my husband on there more. It's a line for me that just feels a little icky. And there's nothing wrong with anyone else that's doing it differently. But this is where that authentic part comes in. Like, what
Yes.
feels good? What do I want to let in? You know, I've been having a conversation with a lot of my friends who are new moms. Like, am I putting my kid out there? Because I also work with children. They work with children. And it's like, what feels good? What feels like it's almost like using my kid? Like, it's a really, and it's truly, again, there is no right or wrong way to do this. No one is doing it correctly or incorrectly. It's just what feels good for you and how much time can you really dedicate. So this is where what's so cool now with Instagram is where you actually get your analytics. Like, I think it's really worth, because I fell into this. I like Instagram. I'm a person who finds the medium. I like it. It hits my dopamine. But when I really looked at it, I enjoy it. It's not where I'm getting clients from, though. So sometimes, but really it's other things like in-person referrals or even Facebook mom groups. Like, so it really took me a little bit to say, wait a second, am I putting money and time into something that I'm claiming helps my business, but isn't actually doing anything? So really looking at like, or maybe is doing something, but not at the level of another thing, because I should put more focus into the other thing. So really looking at that.
Absolutely. It's really important to assess where, and this is your KPIs. This is your KPIs. Where are people coming from, and how, and what's your intention behind using whatever platform, and how much energy